Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got a good number here. Let me get my screen shared. Thank you everyone for joining me today. Today we're going to talk about real estate investing, which those of you that know me know that that is one of my favorite topics ever to talk about and share with other folks. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So today we are going to talk about becoming an investor savvy agent and what that means, how you can utilize that knowledge to tap into different revenue streams as an agent or even as an investor yourself. This is just a surface level training. I will tell you, this is like the tip of the iceberg where I just want to introduce the concepts to you guys. So you can understand what understanding real estate investing can do for your business and for your own wealth building. So we're going to go at the higher level, and then as the weeks progress, I'm going to do some more of these trainings. And so I'll make sure that you guys know about those, and we'll dive a little deeper into each of these topics as we go along so you can understand them a little bit more and more. So let's see. So today, this is what we're going to cover, what it means to really be an investor savvy agent, like what you can do with that mindset, with those strategies, knowledge is income. Like the more that you know and that you can express what you know about real estate investing, it opens up pathways to different avenues of income that you might not have expected it to. And it also helps you attract, repeat, and referral clients. And I don't mean just real estate investors. I mean, like traditional buyers and sellers can then become repeat and referral clients because you're giving them knowledge that other real estate agents don't normally give them. All right. So I'm curious who on the call here has worked with investors in the past or considers themselves an investor-friendly agent. You can raise your hand. I can see most of you. Okay, so there are several of you. Okay, so if you've worked with an investor before, or even if you haven't, do you guys know what a buy box is? You can put a thumbs down or thumbs up if you know what a buy box is, because this is like a standard like real estate investing term that if you truly are an investor savvy agent, you understand what a buy box is. So this is just kind of a gauge, because I've met lots of agents that say that they are investor friendly agents. And really to them, what that means is they work with an investor that gives them like, hey, I want to buy this house. This is exactly what I want you to offer. You put in the contract and you do some negotiations, but you may not necessarily understand what goes behind, like what is behind the thought process of that investor. And part of it is this buy box, which essentially is their criteria. A good investor, a knowledgeable investor will have a set criteria for what they want and why they want it. And so an example of a buy box, like for myself and my husband, our buy box is 1 to 4 units. We prefer something on a slab that doesn't have a basement, because basements sometimes cause foundation issues. We do like to have single, like if we have multi-unit buildings, we like the ones that have like 1 bedroom, 1 bath, because of the type of clientele that attracts. If it's a brick exterior, a box, not too many different roof lines, like that's what a buy box is. Like an investor gets very honed in on what it is that they want, so that way they don't waste time looking at every single thing that comes across their desk. They know what they want. All right, now of you agents on here, how many of you actually own an investment property? I see Rory does.
I used
Kevin.
to, I sold it.
Yeah, okay. So that's the other thing that I realized when I became an agent. I wasn't thinking as an investor at first. And then I realized it matters, because literally we are like stockbrokers, but we don't get arrested for insider trading. Like we have the ability to get the inside scoop on properties when they first come on the market. We have the ability to like work with people off, we might know about a house that's coming on the market down the street, and we can work with investors behind the scenes, and we can make additional funds that way. And we don't get arrested. There's no law against us being able to do that. But lots of real estate agents, we help people buy and sell properties, but a lot of us are afraid to buy properties for ourselves as investments. Oops, sorry, I went too fast. So there we go. Sorry. I get excited and I talk so much and then I run out of breath. All right, so just to cover the basics, this is what I consider, it says transactional. This is what I would consider a traditional invest or a traditional agent versus a savvy investor agent. These are the key differences that I learned when I became an agent and then when I transitioned into becoming an investor. So a traditional or transactional agent, most of the time they're focused on the deal right in front of them right now. One and done. They're like, I sold a house, I bought a house. Hopefully I'll keep in touch with them. Maybe in 10 years they'll buy or sell and I'll get to work with them again. Maybe, maybe not, but you're focused on the next deal and the next person. Again, only buying and selling focus. And you have a limited investor vocabulary, like the buy box, like when I go to interview an agent that I want to know if they're truly investor savvy, I will ask them questions like, have you worked with DSCR loans? Do you know what a buy box is? Do you know what ARV means? A lot of agents don't actually know what that means, even though they claim to be investor friendly agents. An investor savvy agent analyzes a deal very differently. The mindset of an investor savvy agent, even when you're working with traditional buyers and sellers, will be, okay, do you think maybe you'll make this into a rental property in the future? What's the rental market like in this area? Can they turn part of this house into a potential cash flow? Like maybe they can build an apartment or they can make a basement into something else. We're always looking at ways to add value to a property when we're looking at it as an investor savvy agent. And you're also building long-term relationships. If you are truly an investor savvy agent and you're getting good with an investor and you do right by them, they will buy and sell with you over and over and over again. Same thing with buyers and sellers. Like if you can teach it, well, I'll get into that later, and then, like I said, speak the lingo. Like if you know what cap rates, DSCR loans, ROI is, then an investor will know that you are actually an investor savvy agent. So again, this is just touching the surface. We're going to go more into a deep dive later. Okay, take a breath. And then I'm going to leave time for questions at the end if anyone has questions at the end. Okay, so it has 3 revenue streams and then a bonus. Of these revenue streams, I fully admit there's probably 1,000 different ways that you can slice and dice this. So when you become,
Anna, can you let those other people into the meeting?
oh yeah, thank you. I don't see the notification with my screen open. Please hold. I appreciate you. And if anybody notices this, like if you notice that other people are in and I don't catch it, please let me know. I get on a roll and then it's like, okay, there we go. All right, so thank you for letting me know that. Okay, so we're going to look at the different revenue paths as an investor savvy agent. So the first one, and this is kind of what I mentioned earlier, we're like stock traders, insider stock trading without getting arrested, is becoming an investor yourself. A lot of times you get the first like lead on an off-market property and understanding how you can potentially create value in it, whether it's through buying it and keeping it as a rental. I will acknowledge here in Northern Virginia and the DMV area, sometimes that's a little difficult because the price points are so high, but there are creative ways to even do that with rentals. That's a little bit deeper into investing, but there are such things as renting by the room. Some people will buy bigger houses and rent by the room, all dependent on what your county codes and regulations are. You can do a BRRRR, which is essentially you buy, renovate, rent. Oh my God, I forgot what it stands for. You buy, renovate, rent, repeat. Thank you. Where you basically buy a property, you add value to it by renovating it, you rent it, then you can go ahead and get a DSCR loan, which is a DSCR loan is a type of loan product that a lot of investors use that doesn't rely on a person's credit to get the loan. It's based on the income that a property can generate. So it is a commercial type loan. Oh, I see more people coming in. But you would rent it, then you can renovate it, then you can rent it, then you can refinance it, and then you can repeat, because a perfect BRRRR is where you basically get all the money that you put in back through the refinancing process. Sometimes it's not a perfect BRRRR. You may leave a little bit of money out, but you may be able to get most of your money back out through the refinance, and then you use those funds to buy the next rental property and repeat the process. House hacking, that's something that a lot of folks, like some of my buyers, that's actually something I recommend that they do. House hacking is essentially where you rent out part of your house to pay part of your mortgage. And fix and flip is exactly what it says. That's pretty lucrative here in the area if you have the right team members. You find a property, you add value to it by fixing it up, and then you flip it and sell it, and then you collect the delta. So that's one revenue path, is actually becoming an active investor yourself. Some investment types are more passive, more active than the other. It kind of just depends what your flavor is. Serving other investors. This is where I was talking about, like, if you get in good with an investor, they will become your partner for life. And they usually know other investors that they can connect you to. So this is if you're good at finding off-market deals. If you're a door knocker and you happen to come across a property where someone may be in distress, maybe they are in a hoarder situation, maybe they inherited the property and they don't really know what to do, but they know they want to be done with it. And this gives you an opportunity to provide them a solution and get a property for an investor that you are working with. And they, I mean, if you can do that for them, they will come to you all day long, 1,000 times over. You also learn how to get creative with the financing. And that's a little bit about what I was talking about with like DSCR type loans. Creative financing is also things like seller financing. There are instances where someone has fully paid off their mortgage, and you can set it up so that the transaction, the owner of the property becomes the bank. And a lot of times you can negotiate better rates and terms that way. Teaching your clients is the other one. If you learn to teach your buyers and sellers when you first meet them, especially buyers when they're young, to look at a property as a real estate investment, as a stepping stool to building their wealth, you are more likely to increase how often they're going to buy and sell with you. So a buyer that may traditionally buy a property, and historically, I think they move every 10 to 15 years, and maybe closer to 10 years now. If it's a first-time home buyer and they're thinking like an investor, knowing that this property is just a stepping stone to their next one, there's a good chance they're going to call you in about 3 years and ask you about what equity's been built, what the interest rates are like, and kind of be like, okay, I think I'm ready to move on to the next. And if you taught them right, they may even keep the first property as a rental property. So that is one way that you can increase revenue with clients that you have now, that you serve now. Same thing with sellers. Excuse me, I need some water. With sellers, if you go to a seller today, I feel like a traditional agent would be like, they're like, I need to sell. And you're like, yep, let's go. Let's put a sign in the ground. But if you can go to that seller and say, well, do you really need to sell? Do you want to keep it as a rental property? And ask them those questions. I guarantee you that most sellers will look at you differently than they look at other agents, because a lot of other agents are just about selling the property, not really about helping them build their wealth for the future. So if you can sit down with a seller and walk them through different options of maybe keeping the house, maybe they don't want to keep the house, but maybe you walk them through situations where they can take some of the proceeds from their property and help them buy other properties in other locations that become investments. That's, I'm sorry, that is a huge tool to getting someone to be a lifelong client and or referral source, because you help them in a way that other agents typically probably wouldn't. And the bonus, and this kind of ties actually back more to being a real estate investor yourself, are the tax savings from having rental properties. I'm willing to bet if I ask how many of you have had to pay taxes at the end of the year because of your commission, I'm curious, have any of you had any large tax bills that you've had to pay Uncle Sam because you don't have enough deductions? Maybe some of you are smarter and you have. So if you have, that's where real estate investing really comes in handy. A savvy agent that knows about real estate investing will take some of that commission and put it into a rental property, work with a tax advisor. I am not an accountant, I'm not a tax advisor, nor do I pretend to be one on TV. But real estate investing is actually a huge way. My husband and I, like, my husband has a W-2 job. I am a real estate professional by trade because I'm licensed, and we are able to offset his W-2 income with our rental properties, not just because I'm an agent, but because we have several rental properties. There's depreciation, there's lots of other tax, I'll say, loopholes that the wealthy take advantage of, and that's why they don't have to pay taxes. So from a real estate perspective, agents that tell me they're paying tens of thousands of dollars in taxes, I'm like, oh, if only they had bought some real estate property, some investment property, they could have probably reduced that tax bill. And in most cases, if you're going to hold a property, real estate is a time game. If you hold it long enough, it will appreciate. You will get something back out of it. That's money that you're going to see return to you at some point in the future, or you pass it on to your kids and make it their problem. Okay. So now we're just going to talk about this. I mentioned this earlier, so this is a little bit of a recap about when you're talking to your actual clients. They may not be investor savvy yet, but when you're talking to your buyers or sellers, these are things that you can say to them to start planting those seeds naturally. Like, have you ever thought about keeping this as a rental? And I would say that to buyers as well, because sometimes I want to understand what their long-term goals are. You want to cast that vision for more than just right now. You want to cast that vision for 5 to 10 years from now. Do you see yourself in this house 5 years from now? No. Okay. Well, what would you like to see 5 years from now? Do you think you would keep this as an investment property? A lot of buyers and sellers don't think about it because no one's ever talked to them about real estate investing. This could generate monthly income. Again, that's something for the sellers. Focusing on the cash flow benefits, depending on where you are. I recognize, again, in Northern Virginia, this is a little bit of a tough thing to do sometimes, but it is possible if you can provide creative solutions on how they could potentially cash flow. Like if they have an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, if they have like separate entrances to a basement, it's definitely possible. And then again, let's compare with an investor lens. Hold on. Sorry, I'm still letting people in. And then introducing the analytical perspective. And this is where you're showing them things like, what's your return on investment? Like for a first-time home buyer, maybe they have a really large down payment, but they don't necessarily need to put the whole thing down, but they have in their mind that they want to use all of their down payment to buy this house. And if you have an investor savvy lender to work with, you may be able to say, well, why don't you use part of that down payment for your house? You can get, funding a FHA loan or like a residential loan because you're going to live here. Let's look at how we can make this an investment property. And then maybe you use some of that income, keep some of that down payment to make modifications to the house that you're buying so you can create a rental unit to create some income for yourself. And that's what this could look like. Or save that down payment and buy a second property somewhere else. So that's where you're kind of planting the seeds naturally with your clients and building that mindset, building that rapport. So the odds of them coming back to you more often and remembering you from all the other agents, it's a little greater because you're giving them ideas that most agents don't give them. Okay, so if you signed up for this training, I do have an investor toolkit that I put together. It's basically a spreadsheet of some basic tools and resources that I've used to, I'll say, become investor savvy. If you haven't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you should. That's more of a mindset book. He talked a little bit about real estate investing and how it is a wealth building tool, but it really does change your perspective. I will also highly encourage the book called The Cash Flow Breakfast Club. This is actually the book that changed, I'll say, my life when it came to being an investor. It's a parable-based book. It's actually written by a local real estate agent here in Loudoun County, or he's a broker, named Omni Casey. And when I read the book, that was the turning point because me personally, I didn't say this up front, but I came from the federal government. I was a Department of Defense employee for almost 20 years. And I didn't want to work for the rest of my life, like for someone else. And I became an agent and I realized like, holy hell, I'm still working for money. Like if I stop working today, no money's going to come in. Like if I decide I don't want to take clients for a while. So this book, I came across it. I don't know how. Thank God I did. And this book talks exactly about that. It's a parable about an agent who was really well off, but had nothing, had no retirement plan, had no cash. Like he had no plan in place. And it was very eye-opening because this book kind of walks through the agent kind of mentality of just making money, but not really creating a future plan, and how this person goes through those phases of realizing how real estate investing can help them take their commissions and create passive income so they don't have to work for money for the rest of their lives. I will also say local real estate investor meetups, they are everywhere. So if you can find one, I would say to go to one. If you're here in Northern Virginia, again, I advocate for the Cash Flow Breakfast Club because my husband and I actually help lead one of the ones in Arlington. There's some in Fairfax, Maryland. I have another EXP agent friend of mine Nico, he does the one in Maryland. There's also a large community within my brokerage, which is EXP, called Grid. It's led by Rob Chavez. That's another huge investor meetup group that you may want to look into. You can Google search a lot of these, or you can go into Meetup, the application, and look for investor meetups. And I encourage you to go because these are all people that have been where you are, and you learn by being in the room with people. Investors are super giving. Agents I have found in my brokerage are also super giving with knowledge, but I found that investors are even more giving Like most investors that are truly investors want to teach people how to do real estate investing. They're willing to take you under their wing. They're willing to have these coffee dates and chat with you. And I have learned so much. You can learn a lot from the books, but learning by being in rooms with these people 10x's your speed to learning these things. I will also say there's tons of resources out there like podcasts and blogs. I'm giving myself all kinds of plugs here. So the Agent to Investor podcast, that's a podcast that I host myself, again, with my friend Nico. And that's just our journey as real estate investors, because we're new. I'm not going to pretend like I've been doing this forever. Been doing this about 3 years, but it has changed my life and the way that I look at properties and the way that I look at building wealth and the way that I build my business. So Nico and I talk about like the good, the bad, and the ugly, because it's not all pretty. Being an investor has its ups and downs. And Bigger Pockets, if you've never heard of Bigger Pockets, it's a huge, huge community, huge platform. They're kind of like the godfathers of real estate investing as far as education goes. They have tons of podcasts. They have a forum and a website that you can sign up for a free account, and you can connect with other investors all over the world and all over the country through Bigger Pockets and learn through, and they have tons of books. There's so many books that's going to be on the list as well. If you signed up, like I said, for this training, I'll make sure to send out that list in a Word document to you afterwards. You'll get an email with that list of resources that you can start looking at and books and things that you can start reading. But I highly recommend to just start reading a book. It will change your life. Wow, I got through this so much faster than I thought I was going to get through this. Because I really just wanted to do a super high level, like just starting to plant that seed, like I talked about earlier, where real estate investing, like people just don't, like agents just don't think about how many ways that you can use real estate investing. They just think like, I don't want to be an investor. I don't want to be a landlord. But there's so many other avenues that real estate investing knowledge can help you in your business. And I'll even give you like super quick example, since I have a little bit of time before I take questions, is I had a client, she's a buyer, she's not an investor. She wanted to buy a townhouse, and the person selling it was an investor and had a tenant in there for a 3-year lease. It didn't make any kind of sense. And the other agent was like, well, she's got to buy it with the person in place. And I was like, okay. She wasn't necessarily an investor savvy agent. And so I was like, well, what about cash for keys? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, how about we talk to the tenant to see what their number is? There is probably a dollar figure in mind that this tenant would take to walk away from that lease. And then my client can move in, because she didn't want to rent it. She wanted to live in it. So we talked to the gentleman and we were able to come up with a number. And I will say, unfortunately, that one didn't close for other reasons that had nothing to do with that. But that's the kind of problem-solving solution that I personally don't think I would have thought of had I not been an investor savvy agent and seen it and heard from other people. Ooh, I see Rory raising his hand. All right, we might as well go for it because we're almost at the end. What you got?
Great, thank you so much, Anna. This is awesome information, and definitely would love to get some more information from you on the DSCR program. And like, if you can talk a little bit more about some of the parameters that go into that. Like, obviously, that I think they would use rental income, and you're looking at NOI, and how does that impact rates, and what kind of programs are out there?
Yeah. Ooh, let me admit someone. So DSCR stands for debt service coverage ratio. It's a type of loan product. Most lenders that do provide those products, it's done to LLCs. They're done to commercial entities and not necessarily to an individual. So you would have to get an LLC to be qualified to get a DSCR loan in most cases. The debt ratio usually means whatever the, like if you're borrowing, it has to be 1% of the loan amount that you're trying to borrow, that like the rent needs to cover. So if you want to borrow, if you want to refinance a property at $100,000, then that property needs to generate at least $1,000 in income, in rental income. They don't put a whole lot of like, they don't look at like bills and other things like that. But it's usually just how much income does it bring in? Okay, we're willing to give you, if it meets the 1% rule, I guess I will essentially say some companies are a little different. Some companies will be like 1.25. Like if you want this much, then you have to have 1.25% like of the rent coming in to cover, like to get the amount of debt that you're asking for. the rates are usually a little bit higher because it is considered a commercial loan product. So it's not as low as if you were getting like a FHA loan or a personal residential loan. And sometimes there are points involved. It all depends on the lender. Lenders have different, like I'll say, like parameters for what they include or what they want, or for their DSCR products. And a lot of times, the more, I guess, the more experience you get under your belt, some of these DSCR lenders also give you, I'll say, a break in the rates if you show that you have more experience and that you've been able to pull off some of these transactions successfully. And you can show that track record, or if you're partnering with someone that has a really good investor track record that you can show, then sometimes they will also cut you like a deal on the rate if you can show that you have an investor track record. Okay. Let me see. I'm gonna look through the comments. So I think this is my last slide. Hold on, and then I'll open it up to questions. So you can always reach out to me. I'm usually on Instagram. I'm Ana Bialek on all platforms, but Ana Bialek _ Realtor on Instagram. Send me questions. I can give you my phone number if you want it. And then we are going to have some additional sessions following up. I know Rory himself is going to be teaching one here soon. And then I should be coming back in a couple of weeks and teaching another investor savvy agent class with a little bit more detail. And if you want to DM me with suggestions, like Rory, you were talking about DSCR loans, maybe I'll ask one of my lender partners if he'll come on and talk more about like investor products that are involved with real estate investing. So I welcome suggestions on like what you guys really want to learn about, because I could talk forever in 1,000 different directions when it comes to real estate investing. Let me see. I'm freezing. Someone said something about fruit cups. I'm not sure. Okay, I don't think
with the DSCR loans, that's requiring 20% down. Is that correct?
that is accurate. In most cases, it is 20% down. Again, that does, I'll say it does depend on your record. With some, if you work with a certain lender multiple times, sometimes they're willing to finagle that, and they can do that. It depends. I'll say it depends on your track record and your reputation, but the standard is 20%. Yes.
So if someone's hey, doing my first investment, and you're walking that client through that, and let's just say they're a single guy and
Oh, I think I lost you, Kyle. You're a single guy and no.
fixing it up.
Okay. Nope. Maybe. All right. I guess we can come back to Kyle's question. Does anyone else have any questions that I can answer? Again, high level. I know this just gives you a taste of real estate investing, but I hope it plants a couple seeds of how expanding your knowledge with a real estate investor like mindset can help you generate additional income, build wealth for yourself by becoming an investor yourself. In some cases, you may even be able to partner with some of these investors. If you know people with money and you know people with crews and that know how to do the fix and flips, like you can become the intermediary and also become like build a partnership that way as well as a cog in this bigger wheel, and produce income for yourself that way. I can go on forever. Does anyone have any other questions? Anything that I said that you wanted more clarification on? If not, I will give.
Am I coming through? Yes, no?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right. Sorry, my apologies. If you're a single guy, let's say, and you're buying your very first house, would house hacking be kind of that first recommendation where you're putting a real low amount down, doing FHA, rehab kind of scenario, and then renting out the rooms and then going to your next house after that? What would be that path forward if someone doesn't have a lot of cash on hand and this is their first, like they have this vision that they want to accomplish?
Yeah. So I would recommend, if you were going to live in the property, house hacking is probably I'll say the easiest way to get into real estate investing, because you can use first time home buyer type loans. You can get the 3% if you're a VA. If you're a veteran, you can do 0% down. So that's probably the most cost-effective way to get into a property. And then, like you were saying, look at the property and the layout of the property. And you can ask your agent if they understand the concepts of investing. Like, I want a house that I can split off the basement. I want a house that has a garage in the back that I can turn into an ADU. And then in most cases, what I've seen is that folks will do that for about a year. And if their finances allow, then they can essentially have like rent out the space that they were living in, and then that becomes their rental property, and then they can move on to the next, and they kind of rinse and repeat every couple of years, and then basically move on, and they're buying the next residence for themselves. So they're also able to use, like, if they're able to use like financing to buy their own primary residence, and they're able to keep moving from house to house. That way they live in one for a couple years, rent out the rooms, or they rehab it somehow and they flip it and then they move on to the next one. But yeah, I would say house hacking is probably the most cost-effective, least money involved way to get into real estate investing. And if you're comfortable enough to rent by the room or rent out some of your space, then that's the way to go. It is uncomfortable, but you got to get through uncomfortable to get to the other side if you want to build this portfolio. Does that help?
Phenomenal. Yes.
Let's see, real estate investing with Coach Carson as well. Yes, so Andrew talked about real estate investing with Coach. So Coach Carson is actually an author through Bigger Pockets. I have the privilege of being friends with him, and he's written a book called The Small and Mighty Real Estate Investor. That's going to be on the resource list, but since Andrew brought it up, that is more of a full circle, like this is how you go through the real estate investing process. And his mantra is more, you buy enough properties to get you the lifestyle you want, not necessarily. Some of the investors that you will come across on some of these platforms will say, buy 1,000 doors, buy 2,000 doors, just keep going. Coach Carson is very much of like systematic, like this is how you buy properties, and this is how you buy enough properties to build the lifestyle that you want. And like enough is enough at some point. So he is a good resource as well. Yes, Kevin, I am using Gamma AI for this presentation. I'm tapping into my AI resources. What general cap rate? I will say the cap rate varies a lot, Rory, depending on what market you're in and what their goals are. I don't know that I can give you a set cap rate, especially with the way interest rates are now. Like in some cases, like when interest rates were super low, I think investors were looking for significantly higher returns because they knew they could get them. And now with the way that the interest rates have gone, like I know some folks that they're willing to take they're willing to take on much smaller gains because they're looking at the end game. They're like, if I can get in and like wait till things like ride out the storm, then I'm okay with that. Does that make sense? I can't give you like a hard and fast cap amount, because I will say I've seen some investors that have wildly different ones because their risk tolerance is different.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And so it's tough to like nail one down exactly. Can a current mortgage be converted to a DSCR loan? You refinance a current mortgage. I think you can. I would have to ask my lender buddy about that. But again, a DSCR loan can only be done to a corporation, like an LLC in most cases, to an entity. So you would have to essentially figure out how to, like our properties that we bought that are under an LLC, and they have to be in the LLC name in order to get the DSCR loan. So I would have to defer to a lender because I'm not a lender either, but I can find out for you. If you want to shoot me a message and let me know how to contact you, that's for JP's phone. I don't know who you are.
Yeah, hi, this is me. Sorry, I'm still trying to get things out. Which, yeah, it was interesting. It was an interesting concept you shared. But I was wondering how well can that be applied, especially for situations when you have pretty much followed a path of moving into a home, living in for a couple of years, and then moving out. Now, if at some point in time you need to generate some cash out of it, and having that home continue to be rent, and so I thought DSCR makes sense, but then it's been always funded through a traditional mortgage.
Yeah, so there are some people that will leave the property in a traditional mortgage, like once they move out. A lot of people shift to DSCR loans. Part of it is because it doesn't hit your credit personally like a traditional loan would. So sometimes people want to, I'll say, open up the bandwidth, because I think what I've heard is, each person can probably have about 10 conventional loans, maybe 20 between a couple if each of them have a loan apiece. But there comes a point where your debt to income ratio just, it doesn't make sense and you can't get any more loans in your name. That's where a lot of times the DSCR loan comes in handy, because it's not based on anyone's credit. It's not tied to a credit. It's tied to the income for the property itself. So if you moved out of a property, you could in theory leave it in the mortgage that it's in now and rent it out. And then at some point, if you realize like, okay, I want to get this mortgage out of my name, some lenders will work with you, honestly, and I'll defer to any lenders on the call, where if you can show rental income coming in, they can kind of do some magic and offset your numbers to get you another personal loan. But one option would be to basically put that asset into an LLC name, which again, I'm not a lawyer either. But at some point, if you have enough properties, you may want to do that anyway for liability purposes, because of course, owning properties, there's always a liability, and there is certain structures that you would put together once you get a big enough portfolio that will protect your personal assets as well as your rental assets from one another. So you may want to put it in an LLC for liability purposes anyway. And then if you put that property in an LLC, then you can get it refinanced into a DSCR loan.
Got it. And it's possible as a concept to have a property transferred over into an LLC if it was not earlier. So it was purchased as a personal property,
Correct.
residential purpose, and then you can convert it into an LLC.
Correct. Yes, correct. That is accurate. It does.
But
there may be additional costs with title, because you would have to go
right,
through the title process to get it converted over, and the deed would have to be converted over.
right.
And you may have to work with the lender at that point as well. We did that with one of our properties, and we were able to get it done. So it's not impossible. It just may take a little bit of work and working with the right people.
Got it. But would you know, does it entail refinancing happening? Because that specific property I'm talking about was picked up at a time when the good times will never come back, where you were at 2% or 1% something.
Yeah, and they may be a reason to that by itself may be a reason to keep it in the mortgage that it's in now, is because it has such a good rate. And because inside, and you have to look at the numbers, because there may be an instance where you do want to refinance it, but then you realize what the rates are now, it may not cash flow because your
Right,
monthly
right.
payment change. So in that case, because we have a property like that, I'm speaking from experience, and we've decided to leave that one as part of our personal assets, because we don't want to get rid of the interest rate on it.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's always a motivation, but then there are situations where you require some bumper cash to maybe buy a primary or do something.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and then there's other ways to get creative with that. It's less common, but there are some lenders out there that will do a HELOC against a second property, or against a rental property. There aren't lots of lenders that do that, but there are some that are out there. And so one option in that case would be to get potentially a HELOC against that rental property if you want to tap into that cash. Again, you'd have to work the numbers out to see if it makes sense, but if rate is low enough and that property is generating enough cash, you may be able to get a HELOC on that rental property, pull the cash out. Some HELOCs are interest only payments, depending on how it works. It's probably a little more complex than I can go into here, but like there is a strategy moving forward. Like there are other loan products that you could potentially use to tap into that cash without refinancing and losing that rate.
Interesting. I mean, thanks. I won't hijack this conversation on my specific topic, but this is helpful. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, that's perfectly okay. I mean, I'll be honest, like my primary residence that I live in now, I've lived in here for 20 years. My husband and I took a HELOC against this property, our primary residence, and that's what we use to buy a lot of our properties cash. We use the line of credit on this house, and then we're able to refinance it using like a DSCR loan product, and then we pay the HELOC back. And we've essentially created we're our own, private money lender in that regard for some of our properties. So there's always different ways to get creative with it. And again, this is part of the mindset shift that I think is different than the traditional agent.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
Appreciate that.
House hacking, don't get married. I mean, I know some people that house hack and are getting married and have kids. There's a thank you, Laura. Someone asked how you contacted me. Shoot me a message on Instagram at that handle right there on the screen, and I will get back to you. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Kevin says duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. And yes, that is accurate. So that is also a good point. Kevin brings up a good point, that you can buy up to a 4-unit building using a personal, like a residential loan, a traditional conventional loan. If you're going to live in one of the units, I will say around here, it's a little harder to find triplexes and fourplexes. But if you're able to land one of these multi-unit properties, you can almost have 2 separate apartments, 3 separate up to 4 separate apartments, live in one, rent out the other 3. So that is an option for house hacking as well, where you still have kind of your own space. So that is an option. Can you remind us of that podcast? The podcast is the Agent to Investor podcast. We do a lot of, Nico and I do a lot of like, these are the good, the bad, and the uglies of our personal investing. And then we've managed to expand our network. So we have lots of guests that come on that are way smarter than us that talk about different types of loan products. We've had CEOs from Steadily. Steadily Insurance is actually an insurance company that is strictly geared to real estate investors. And so that is one of the companies that I personally use because that's all they do. They provide insurance policies for real estate investing properties, all different shapes and sizes. Agent to investor. Okay, that's it. I don't have any more questions. Does anyone else have anything else that they have burning desires? Yep, that was my last slide. All right, I'm gonna call it once, call it twice, and then I'm gonna give you your life back. So before I do that, let me take off of screen share, stop sharing. I would love to know if you guys found any value of this. If you want to like raise your hand, come off camera. Was this helpful? Did this open your eyes to something different that you might not have thought of before? Yeah. Okay.
Anna, did you record this?
I hope to God I
Is this
did.
being recorded?
Yes, it is.
Okay, because I feel like everything went way over my head and I feel like I need to watch it again. It's very overwhelming, but I have the traditional mindset. So that's my problem. But
No,
I'm also driving.
No, that's fine. It is being recorded, so we will
Okay.
upload the recording. It's going to be on YouTube at FYR University, but I will also make sure
thank
when
you.
I send out the resources, I will also get the link for the YouTube recording and send that all together in the email to each of you. If you didn't sign up, I created like a landing page where I had people sign up, and you may have gotten reminders telling you that the meeting was going to happen today. I will drop that landing page here so you can sign up, and then I will make sure that you get the resource handout that I talked about and the link for the podcast recording. I'm going to put that in the chat. If you miss, wait, what's happening? There currently are no participants. Okay, that's fine. Hold on. User error. I did so well until just now. Okay. That's the link that takes you to a landing page I created. It will give me your email information, and I'll be able to make sure to send out the resources from today's training. And when we have the next training, I'll also make sure to shoot you an email to let you know when that's happening and what that topic is going to be. If you miss that link or you don't get a chance to do it, just find me on Instagram, shoot me a message, and I'll make sure that I get that information to you. So, and Cindy, don't worry, when I went to my first investor meeting, I felt like I was drinking through a fire hose. I had no idea, but that's why it's so important to put yourself in a room with people that think like this, because slowly but surely it rubs off on you. You catch it, you start to learn things. And so just keep showing up and it'll sink in.
Okay, thank you.
All right, guys, I'm going to give you the rest of your day back. Thank you guys for showing up. Reach out to me. Let me know what you guys think and what you want to learn about next, and have a great day.
Thank you.